Okay, you've got the toddler bed all set up and the room is looking adorable and you're just excited for bedtime to get much easier. But instead of your kid loving their new bed, you're met with tears at bedtime. Maybe they're even running out of the room. Maybe you're even getting a midnight visitor from your now crib-free child. Well, if you're left thinking, wait, I thought this was supposed to be like a big, exciting milestone, you're not alone. The transition to a big kid bed is a big milestone, but if you don't have the right plan, it can kind of feel like bedtime is starting to unravel. Well, today I'm going to show you how to make this a smooth transition so your kid loves their new bed and sleeps there all night long. Let's dive in. Here's the truth that most people don't tell you. Just because your kid can move to a big kid bed doesn't mean that they should. The ideal age to transition is around 3 years old because before that, kids just don't really have the impulse control or the maturity it takes to decide to stay in their bed on their own. They really need that crib to really remind them of their boundaries and make them feel safe and comfortable. Now, there are a couple exceptions here. If your child is younger than 3, but they're climbing out of the crib and you've tried everything that you can think of to get them to stay in and it's just not working and it's becoming a safety issue, then making the switch might be necessary. And also, if your child is maybe close to the age of 3 and they're already sleeping great, meaning they're falling asleep without your help and they're sleeping through the night and they're asking for a big kid bed, then that's wonderful. It might be time to move them as well. But if your child is under the age of 2.5 and they still rely on a lot of help from you in order to fall asleep, like you have to sit in there with them or hold their hand or rub their back, or even if they're going through a big other life change, like they're getting a sibling or you're moving, then hold off on making the switch. It's really best to work on encouraging your child to be an independent sleeper when they're still in the crib before you make the switch to the bed. Because if your child is still struggling with sleep, and then you take them out of that crib environment, it usually just causes the sleep problems to get worse. Now, let's say you're in a common situation that I hear about all the time, which is your kid isn't quite 3 years old yet, but you've already made the switch to the bed and it's just not going well. Like your kid is constantly running out after you, waking up, won't let you leave the room. It's okay to move them back to their crib. Yes, I said it. It's okay to go backwards, especially if they're under 3 years old and you think they kind of lack that maturity. And I don't want it to be viewed like a punishment. Like I want you to explain to them, listen, we're going to move you back into the crib. We'll work on getting your good sleep habits back in place. And if you can sleep well in your crib for 1 week, then we'll move you back to your bed. So that way you're kind of empowering them. You're giving them a very clear goal and then also respecting their feelings. Once your child is over the age of 3 and they're sleeping well independently and you really feel like it's time to make the switch, setting up the room correctly does matter. So remember, the crib is kind of small and cozy. And so you want to try to replicate that with the bed if you can. So a toddler bed is a great choice, or even a twin bed. If your child seems especially nervous, you can even put the mattress just on the floor temporarily so it doesn't feel like big and imposing. And another thing I like to do is, even though they're in maybe a toddler bed or even a twin bed, still try to make it even feel a little bit smaller. You can put some full body pillows in there. I would definitely recommend putting a bed rail so it kind of feels confined like a crib did. So they have that kind of sense of security, that sense of safety. And keep everything else in their room the same. If they had white noise, if they had a lovey, if you can even put the bed in the same place that the crib was, that really just helps to signal to their brain, oh yeah, this is time to go to bed because it's a familiar environment. And if possible, try to avoid pairing the switch to a toddler bed with another big life change, like welcoming a sibling or moving or even potty training or getting rid of the pacifier. Because sometimes when you do too many things at one time, it just kind of overloads your kiddo and it makes everything really difficult and emotional. So if you can space out those big transitions, that might make this process go more smoothly. All right, let's troubleshoot 3 common toddler bed transition problems. Let's say they refuse to even get in the bed. I mean, I hope this doesn't happen, but it could. So here's one way to kind of get them through that. Try some really low pressure, low stakes introduction to the bed. So after you put the bed up in their room, maybe you spend some time reading books in there or snuggling with them or even letting them maybe watch a show on their iPad in the bed. Just doing something fun, play with some toys, just anything where they kind of get used to their bed and start forming some nice, cozy, snuggly memories in there. Now, if they're crying because they want their crib back, here's something that you can do. If there is space in their room to have both of them, you could leave the crib up for a couple days. If not, no big deal, but you could kind of plan like a goodbye ceremony for the crib where, you could blow the crib kisses, you could get the crib some balloons and say bye-bye. And then really what you need to think about doing is really beef up your kids' confidence that they can sleep in their new big kid bed. Because we do want to make this feel like an exciting transition for them, like they're really growing up. And most kids really take to this well if we parents kind of convey our confidence in them. Now, if they keep getting out of their bed after bedtime, I feel you. I have lived through this. This brings us to our most common toddler bed transition problem, which is where kids keep getting out of the bed. So it's just this freedom of like no longer being in the crib, no longer being confined. And this is a really natural part of this transition. So you should probably expect that your toddler is going to go through this for a little bit. And it's really part of them just kind of figuring out the new rules for this new sleep situation. So the best thing that you can do, again, is convey your confidence in them at bedtime. So as you put them to bed for the first night in their new bed, you're going to say, I'm so excited for you sleeping in your new big girl bed or big boy bed. You're going to sleep here just as well as you always did in your crib. And I'm going to be so proud of you. I'm going to see you in the morning. And I really want you to avoid putting any ideas into their head. Like I think some parents will say something like, now don't get up. And it kind of puts the idea in their head like, oh, I can get up now. So I really want you to avoid doing that. And actually, when the bed is really new for kids, I want you to kind of set it up and almost pretend like it's still a crib. So what I did with my younger daughter for a long time, because she was a little bit young, she was not quite 3 yet when we moved her to a bed, I would actually pick her up and place her in her bed. And then in the morning, I would pick her up out of the bed. So every time, I never really encouraged her to climb in and out on her own. I don't think I ever told her to do that or mentioned that she could do that. And I don't think it really ever occurred to her that she could. So that's one trick, is to just keep putting them in the bed and then taking them out. They will eventually learn. Maybe in the early days, you can kind of avoid some of the getting out of bed by not really explaining to them that they actually can get up. And if they do get up, which again, we should expect this is going to happen at some point, I want you to be really calm and consistent and walk them back to their bed and say some type of mantra like time for sleep. The more consistent you can be at doing this, as many times as it takes, they will eventually get the message that once you put them to bed, it's time for bed. So if they come out and then you let them stay up a little bit longer, or if they come out and then you walk them back to bed and you redo the bedtime routine, that's going to be inviting them to keep getting up more and more and more. So I really recommend being very consistent, taking them back, keeping it boring, sticking with the mantra as many times as it takes, and they will get the message that it's time for bed. And the last issue is, what if they start waking up overnight? So if this happens, I want you to look at a couple things. So the first is your child possibly getting overtired? Meaning like, has bedtime pushed a little bit too late recently? Maybe you've kind of fallen off your schedule and bedtime has gotten a little bit late. Or maybe your child recently stopped napping. If either of those two things have happened, then I would recommend moving bedtime about 15 minutes earlier, because just kind of filling up your kid's sleep tank and getting them a little more rest can actually help to prevent those overnight wake-ups. Now, the other thing you need to look at is, are they waking up just to get some attention or snuggles from you? Because in that case, I really want you to look back at bedtime. Because if you are sitting in your room with your child or rubbing their back or kind of snuggling with them until they fall asleep, that can actually cause them to wake up in the middle of the night, to come find you, to do that stuff again, to help them get back to sleep. So that's why it's really important at bedtime to make sure that you're promoting sleep independence, where your child can fall asleep totally alone in their room without anybody else in there with them. That's what's going to help them sleep through the night the best. So yeah, this crib to bed transition is a big deal. And there might be some resistance. I mean, resistance is like our kid's middle name at this age. So as long as you kind of expect that, you set up some clear expectations, you convey confidence and calmness, and you don't get wrapped up in the emotions of everything, and you can be really clear and consistent with your child, you'll get through it just fine. And celebrate the small wins. Really make sure that your kid knows how proud you are of them for being able to sleep in this new bed in this new environment. Sometimes our kids need to borrow from our confidence in them. So really, you've heard me say this a few times in this video, make sure you're really exuding that confidence that you know that they can do it. If you want more tips about how to create the perfect bedtime routine, check out this video.